Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is Darren Doctorman.
And this is Ashley Miller,
And we are the Inglorious.
Treksperts.
And welcome to the ultimate Star Trek Writers Room as we bring you another fantastic panel from Star Trek Las Vegas 2025, where we put together an incredible group of Star Trek writers. And if you can't get enough of writing for Star Trek, if you are a Treksperts Plus subscriber, you'll get a bonus episode this week of Scott Manson conversation with David Gerrold for an up-close and personal look at the incredible career of David Gerrold. So if you don't get enough of him on this panel, you'll get to spend another hour with David, but only for Treksperts Plus subscribers. So, and if you're not already a Treksperts Plus subscriber, go to trekspertsplus.com and you can listen to those episodes exclusively on Spotify. So we hope you'll join us as a member of Treksperts Plus, where you get bonus episodes, commercial-free episodes, and invitations to the Trekspert screening room, which will be starting up again this fall. So join us.
And more Mance.
And more Mance, 100% more Mance. That's right.
And a pony.
Exactly.
No
We're not
pony.
Giving away a pony.
No promise
No,
of
no
pony.
ponies.
Look what Warner Brothers has coming out this month.
What the
Spencer
hell?
for Hire, the complete
Spencer!
series.
You know, that's
Well,
Star Trek adjacent because, you
Yeah,
know,
Because that
Avery
guy.
Brooks is in it.
I got that for Avery, because he's so great as Hawk.
Yeah.
He was so great as Hawk. He was so
So great.
badass.
You know,
Yeah.
and as soon as he started looking like Hawk on Deep Space Nine, he started acting like Hawk.
Sorry,
on Deep
kick.
Space
Oh my God, it's so true. It's like, it's so funny. You hear all the stories of the different producers and writers talking about, well, they felt that he was too scary with the goatee and bald. It's like, what?
Yeah.
He's too scary? So
Yeah,
we
no.
want him to have hair so he looks more, he looks more welcoming. Oh man, the
No,
90s, man.
I like him scary.
Yeah, it was so obvious.
Yeah.
And of course, anybody who watched Spencer for Hire knows how great he was on that show. Why mess with that?
Yeah,
Yep.
and without hair, he's slickery.
Here's another great book I'm reading, Screaming and Conjuring. It's about the horror movies of the 1990s. Really great book by our friend Clark Collis. It's the resurrection and unstoppable rise of the modern horror movie. It's
That sounds
quite the
amazing. I
tome.
want to read that.
Oh, it's your kind of book, man. You dig it the most. It's from our friends at 1984 who did Max Every's book on Dune, and this is their latest, and it's terrific. Same author who wrote You Got Red on Me about the making of Shaun of the Dead.
I'll be damned. Okay.
You'll be dead.
I'll be dead. I'll be damned. You'll be
This
damned.
little one's not
You'll be
worth the
damned.
effort. Speaking of books, by the way, I know, Darren, you're a big audiobook fan, aren't you?
Yes.
I am listening to the greatest audiobook, Barry Sonnenfeld's Best Possible Place, Worst Possible Time.
I have
And-
that one.
Oh, have you listened to it?
Of course.
It's so great.
Yeah.
It's his sequel to Barry Sonnenfeld, Your Mother is Calling,
Right.
which was a memoir. This is just him telling stories about the industry, and because he has no shits left to give, as they say. He's just so on. He just is destroying everyone. But in just the most delightful way. He has stories about Will Smith, Gene Hackman, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Trump. I mean, it's hysterical. And he reads it himself in his nasally Jewish New York voice, similar to some other people we know. And it's great. It's just, I love it. What do you think of it, Darren?
I thought it's great. I mean, I worked briefly with Barry Sonnenfeld on Addams Family too, and he was a delightful persona.
His stories about that and the testing process and how dismissive he was of the whole NRC testing process.
It's it's a lot of fun, and I love his stories.
And it's great because a lot of these directors and producers, people, everyone was a delight. It was delight. We had such a great time making. He is just brutally honest, and he spares no one. The John Travolta and Gene Hackman stories are just,
Right.
I mean, it's like, clearly he does not, it is truly, you'll never work in this town again, because he is so brutally honest about his experiences. It's just fantastic. But, I'm excited about this week's podcast, but I hear it's 5 feet short. It's 5 feet short. I'm not going to go ahead with the podcast because I paid for a full podcast and it's 5 feet short. You remember that in Vegas? That idiot complaining that
Oh
his
my
booth-
God, that guy. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, that
I'm
guy.
not naming any.
It's 5 feet short. You have 5 feet of my booth.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And tomorrow,
It's not the size of the booth, my man. It's the magic you do with it.
Yeah. Tell someone who cares.
Yeah.
It's like, I think he was shocked that we didn't give a shit. Oh, your booth is 5 feet short?
Huh.
Too fucking bad.
Check out how many we don't give.
Because we have nothing to do with it, and it's not our problem, and we
That's
don't
right.
care. And
You
I think
just
people-
activated our not my problem field.
that sounds like a YP.
Is that is an issue, not an ish me.
It's 5 feet short. Okay, whatever you say, dude. Whatever you say. Anyway, this is fun. We had done this panel last year with a bunch of great writers, and unfortunately, the audio got messed up. So we said, let's try it again. This time with it not getting messed up, and we put together a really great group of people. My Ashley and myself moderated it. We got to talk to a bunch of people who worked on Star Trek in various capacities. We talked about the influence of that great book, The Making of Star Trek, which we've talked about so many times on the show. We talked about, working in the Trek universe and how meaningful it was. I'm always amazed how much people talk about how moving this panel is, and, it's interesting because, of course, the process of writing Star Trek has evolved. I mean, it was pretty much freelance driven, in the beginning. And then with Next Generation, you had a staff, but it was still, freelance was coming in to a lot of pitches. People, it was one of the last shows to have an open submission policy. If you had a lawyer and agent, you could submit your ideas, come in to pitch. And now we live in a world where it's just strictly a room. There's no freelancers, and it's just a writer's room and showrunners. So it's very interesting to see how that's evolved and the impact it's had. I wonder, we didn't really talk about this, but is that part of the reason that the original series was so imaginative? Because you had so many different ideas, so many different types of writers who are pitching the show, coming with different ideas.
Perhaps, but I think it's also the sort of the style of writers back then. Writers could write many types of shows, and they had many sort of streams of experience and ideas along with them. They weren't just working from ideas that other show people had.
It's the old they live life, not television.
Yeah. I think that was a big part of it. But also, a lot of these writers actually weren't professional TV writers. They were novel writers. They were playwriters.
And that, kids, is why you need a Gene Coon.
That's correct.
Because damn.
Well, that's why the whole John D.F. Black thing was, a little disingenuous when he says, part of my deal was Gene was, I said, I can't rewrite these writers. I won't do it. And it's like, you have to.
That's the job.
Yeah.
You're supposed to bring it in line with the show.
I mean, City on the Edge of Forever is a textbook example of, what a TV writer, TV producer does. I mean, he comes in with this great idea. It's not something that can be produced. It's not something that's good Star Trek, but they take this brilliant idea from this brilliant writer and turn it into what is a brilliant episode of Star Trek. But, that it had to go through the filter of Gene Coon and DC Fontana and Gene Roddenberry to get to that point.
Yeah.
So anyway, but this was really interesting because the group of writers, span span from TOS to Strange New Worlds. So we're going to introduce you in just a second to this remarkable panel. David Gerrold, representing TOS and TNG. Michael Taylor from Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Lisa Klink from Voyager. Michael Sussman from Voyager and Enterprise. Mike McMahan from Lower Decks. And Onitra Johnson, representing the newest Star Trek, Strange New Worlds. So it's a really exciting group of writers who all found their way to Star Trek in different ways, and they're about to tell you all about it when we come back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. So I want to start with you, David, because I think for a lot of us, you demystified the writing process in your brilliant book, The Making of the Trouble with Tribbles. A lot of us didn't even know that writing was a career, and then here you laid it out, the whole development process of this script and working with Gene Kuhn and honing this, remarkable script that's become one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek ever. What prompted you to sort of write this book about how the sausage was made?
The money? No, what happened is I was selling novels to Betty Ballantine at Ballantine Books, and let me tell you, I had not graduated college, and I wanted to do a directing thing for my senior project, and they said, no, you'll do a writing thing, so they didn't have to be involved, right? And I said, but you don't have a writing instructor here. And they said, we'll think of something. And then my agent called and said, you sold a script, Star Trek wants to talk to you about this outline, the fuzzy thing happened. So I gathered up, at the end of the summer, I gathered up all my notes and outlines and drafts and everything, like a stack, yay high. And September, I took it into CSUN and dropped it on the desk. And they said, well, what's this? And I said, it's my writing project, so I can graduate. And they said, well, what is it? And I said, it's an episode of Star Trek, and they just finished shooting it, and it'll be on the air in December. And I said, what grade am I getting? You're getting an A. Anyway, I had that stack of stuff. Actually had Holly Sherman, some of you may recognize the name. I had her go into the files and steal my writing project back. And so I had the source material for the book. And I said to Betty Ballantine, I said, could we turn this into a book? And she said, oh, yeah. And we had some good luck with Gene Roddenberry's book. Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll have some good luck with this one. And I started writing it, and there was too much material. And I said, can we break it into 2 books? The World of Star Trek and The Trouble with Triples. And she said, yeah, that's a good idea. And later on, after they were published, she said, we should have put all those pictures in color and raised the price another quarter. God knows how many more we could have sold. So, and I'm very grateful because those 2 books paid for my house. I had been working on Land of the Lost and scraping my paychecks together to make a down payment. And I was going to make a down payment, but then the royalty check came in for those 2 books. I was totally surprised because I wasn't expecting it. And I said, oh, I just bought a house. So that's the whole story. And thank you all for buying the books because I really, really appreciate it.
Does anyone on the panel want to speak to sort of the inspiration of David's work and obviously the making of Star Trek by Stephen Whitfield and Gene Roddenberry as being sort of a formative jumping off point for their writing careers? I mean, Mike, was that something for you that was instrumental?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just telling David backstage, I'll just kind of repeat what I was trying to say to him earlier. I remember as a kid reading The Trouble with Tribbles, the making of The Trouble with Tribbles, and the script was in there too. You could see how all the different drafts, how it progressed from idea to story to teleplay. And as I was mentioning to David, had I not come across that book, the idea of you don't even think of like television scripts being written. The actors surely are just kind of making it up, inspired by the beautiful sets. And I was pouring my heart out to David earlier, and he said, "Yeah, a lot of people tell me that." And then he started playing with his dog. So, but I think that's exactly true. I think a lot of us are here because of David.
Yeah, I mean,
I had a very similar experience to you. I read those books, and I thought to myself, my God, how does... Well, probably I didn't think that when I was 9 years old. But I thought, how does somebody do this job? How does somebody sit down and figure out a story and write it and turn it into this and do all this stuff? And I'm still trying to figure all of that out. But I loved those books.
Yeah. I want to ask each panelist, this is how we started this panel off last year, and I think it's a valid question now. Sort of what was your path to writing, and what did either getting staffed or creating Star Trek mean to you? Because I think it's fair to say everybody other than David on this panel is a huge fan of Star Trek, and David as well. And I'd love to know what it meant, because, you're on Charlie's Angels, you're on McMillan and Wife, okay, you're on a lot of shows. It doesn't mean the same being on Star Trek, because Star Trek is such an important show for so many of us. I mean, Mike, you were doing your Star Trek: The Next Generation season 8, long before you ever created Lower Decks.
Yeah, when I was an assistant, so when I moved out to LA, I didn't have any connections. And I'm honored to be on stage with all of you guys, by the way, because I write the animated comedy version of what you guys all do, so it's cool to be here. Lower Decks. But thank you, everybody. The checks are in the mail. The checks are in the mail. And I wasn't sure when I was trying to get my foot in the door writing, do you write spec scripts or do you write original stuff, right? Because some people only read spec scripts, because how am I supposed to know if you can write TV unless you're writing somebody else's idea, because that'll be your job? Or how am I supposed to know if you can write unless you write an original idea? And you're getting the complete opposite answers from a lot of people. And all I wanted to do was write Star Trek, and nobody wanted to read that because they were making Big Bang Theories and whatnot. So I started doing Star Trek on Twitter, and then I became a writer's assistant on a show called Rick and Morty that hadn't aired yet. And across 4 seasons of Rick and Morty, I went from writer's assistant to showrunner, just because I was a really good fit there. And I learned how to make a TV show in those years, in those 4 seasons. And I was able to take the tweets that I had done and talk to, I actually turned down an opportunity to be a staff writer on Discovery, because I told them I'm actually working on this show that's not out yet. It's called Rick and Morty. I think it's going to be a big deal. And my agents told me I was a moron. And like 3 years later, Alex Kurtzman called me and said, I'm a big fan of Rick and Morty. Will you come in and tell me what your take on a Star Trek would be? And that's what kickstarted all of it. So for me, with my scratchy voice from being at a convention all day, it was just doing the thing I loved, even though nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to read a Star Trek spec. Nobody was asking for Star Trek tweets. And I just kept drilling towards that. And I asked them to play that music while we were here to make it actually feel a little better.
Maybe you guys should go through the door and just start shouting Lower Decks.
No. But I'm a huge proponent in nobody asks you to do this. You're here because you're going to do it no matter what. And if what you want to do is Star Trek, be writing and making things that express what you love about it just all the time.
Michael, you have such a fascinating path to landing on Star Trek. And of course, since Star Trek, you've been a showrunner, you've had your own shows, you've developed your own shows. But I'd love to, and nobody should attempt to follow Michael's path to the industry. But
it's very, very typical path to writing for television. All you have to do is be in a rock band in the East Village in New York and have no money, and live upstairs from a bar called The Edge, which basically meant I lived over the edge, and write a Simpsons script because the band liked to watch The Simpsons after practice, and why not write a Simpsons script? And turned out The Simpsons had enough Simpsons scripts, but a guy who came to the bar read that script. That was Renee Echevarria, who was in freelancing wonderful episodes of The Next Generation, like I, Borg, for the show, and said, you could pitch this show and maybe sell an episode. And so I pitched a bunch to him, and he turned down everything. And so I told him, I decided I had an idea that I thought was so good, I'm not even going to fucking tell him. Instead, I'll just write the script. And I did, and sent that one in, and that got me a chance to pitch formally. And I ended up selling my first episode of Deep Space Nine to him. So really, it's entirely typical path. But again, I didn't quite know that Michael says that episodes of television were written, that it was a career, that people went about it in an organized fashion. So I really just completely kind of half-assedly found my way into it. But
I like that they're out there scribbling on a pad. Start a band. It's like, no Renee Echevarria.
I do recommend starting a band because no one owns that except you. I did my first year on Star Trek Voyager when they hired me full-time. And it was wonderful, but it was also like being in writer's prison. You'd have a 3-week break after 26 episodes. You'd come back, and people would say, "How was your vacation?" And it's like, did you actually even leave? But I had a birthday during that year, and my band came out. We rented at a bar to play and rented a rehearsal room that had just been vacated by L7, a famous LA punk band, and the vibes were there. I remember just counting off, stepping on my distortion pedal, and feeling like I had my life back. You don't know what anyone, anything. There's no studio, there's network. I would say start a band, and actually fuck television. Just start a band, really.
Yeah, you want to give us notes? We'll knife you to death. So, Mike, what about you? What was your pathway to Star Trek? And I know, it was such a satisfying for you to finally get the dream, because you're a huge Star Trek fan.
Yeah, it was, I didn't have much of a plan or a backup. I basically moved to LA deciding that I'm going to write for Star Trek. And Next Gen had just gone off the air, and Deep Space Nine was going, and Voyager was starting up. And it's funny, in many ways, it started at a convention just like this. There was a con in Pasadena, and Brandon Braga and Ron Moore were doing a panel on how to write for Star Trek.
They actually were doing workshops, I think, in Pasadena on how to write for Star Trek. But this is during the time of the old open writing submissions.
Right, because they, each series was doing 26 episodes a season. They needed story ideas, and I found out about the internship program at that convention, and later applied for it. Took some old Next Gen scripts that had been kicking around, and ultimately got to come in. And on the last day of that internship, I sold an idea to Michael Piller, and it was a couple years later. I was on staff at the end of Voyager's run, but. Yeah, it was amazing. It was exactly what I came out here to do, which is pretty rare. And I feel, well, bad isn't necessarily the right word, but I feel for the writers who might be coming up today, because if a show doesn't have that many episodes, it's a lot harder for a new writer to break.
Listening to Michael bemoan 26 episodes and only having a few weeks before he has to go back. Oh, poor Michael.
Yeah, no, I missed that.
Yeah.
You have no time to spend all that money. I know.
Can I just point something out here? I mean, this is a little bit unsettling. That almost half this panel is named Michael. I think the universe is a simulation, man. It's freaking me out. Okay, I'm done. Go ahead.
Jen, what about you? How did you end up, on Prodigy, and what was your sort of Star Trek story?
I mean, in terms of, oh boy, let's go back 20 years. I was started in live action and development, and the show I was on got canceled a month in. I was like, okay, well, there goes that. And then development in animation at Nickelodeon needed help, and I got into the animation world. Back when women were kind of subjugated to preschool, it was very hard for women to write action, which is what I wanted to do. I loved sci-fi, I loved fantasy, I loved D&D, I loved Star Trek since I was at least, 13. And I kind of punched my way through as hard as I could, and ended up doing Justice League action for Warner Brothers, and ever since then it kind of took from there. Season 1 of Prodigy was finishing up. I was doing a show called The Legend of Vox Machina, and good show. And then the Hagemans needed someone for season 2, and I was shocked I would even be able to do that, because animation in Star Trek wasn't a thing. There you go, Exhibit A. We was like, how is that going to happen? So it just happened to be under the Nickelodeon banner, which kind of almost maybe killed it a little bit, but that's a whole other story I won't be very bitter about, but that's okay. Someone go watch Prodigy, please. That would be fantastic. There you go. And I pitched on season 2, and it was like, it was a dream come true. It mattered so much more than anything I had ever done. To this day, I mean, I just finished Stranger Things, Tales from '85, that will be coming out next year, and that's an amazing show, but nothing beats Star Trek, nothing. And
Bears may beat Battlestar Galactica, but nothing beats Star Trek. Lisa, same question. What was your gateway to writing and your love of Star Trek, and what did it mean to you when you ended up on Voyager?
Well, like Mike, number 3, my journey to Star Trek specifically started at a Trek convention with Brandon and Ron running a writer's workshop. Because I'd originally come out to Los Angeles to do features. And, I worked for a director, and I'd been writing some really bad action scripts. And then I went to this, I was a big fan of Next Generation. And that's when this convention came along, and I went to the writer's workshop, and that's when it kind of dawned on me, hey, I could write for television. And I thought, since they had this open script submission policy, which nobody has anymore, they told us that basically if you write it, we'll read it. And I said, okay. So I wrote a spec Next Generation and sent it off. But then that show was coming to an end, and Deep Space Nine was starting, so I got called in to pitch for Deep Space Nine. And I think I went to 4 different pitch meetings before I sold something, an episode that became Hippocratic Oath. And then, thank you. And based on that, I got on staff on Voyager. And my whole first season, I remember just being terrified because I knew what a big deal this was. I knew, this is not only, my first professional writing gig, but this is Star Trek. That this is a huge franchise and so many people watch it and love it, and I'm going to screw it up, which fortunately I did not. But I just remember feeling kind of the weight of the franchise. But I'm now so happy to be part of it.
Yeah. The next question is for the dog. Were you upset in The Enemy Within when they made that dog wear the horn when he became the evil dog? No? No comment? Okay, David, what about you? It's a little different for you because Star Trek didn't exist, but how did you first find out about a show called Star Trek? And can you talk about those early days of working with Gene Kuhn? The importance of having, if not a mentor, someone who championed your work?
Well, I didn't know there was a show called Star Trek until, I think, 2 weeks before an ad appeared in TV Guide. I said, oh crap, it's probably going to be another Land of the Lost, a kiddie show. But I tuned in out of curiosity. And I thought, oh, well, that's a strange design for a spaceship. That doesn't look right to me. I was arrogant, okay? And then they had this guy with the pointy ears, and I thought, well, and he has no emotions. Well, how do you write for a guy who has no emotions? That he's not going to be very interesting. They're probably going to drop him after a while. And I told you I was arrogant. And then they beamed down to the planet. I said, well, no, that doesn't, that's, I'm very hardcore science over here. And I've told this story before, and they get to the alien archaeology, and the doorway was not shaped for human beings. And I sat up straight. I said, oh, somebody understood that an alien race would not be shaped like human beings. So I started paying attention. And there was a moment in that first episode that sticks with me as Uhura is walking down the hall, and here comes a salt vampire coming the other way, and she sees this very handsome black man, and I sat up straight and I said, holy cow, they got one right. And that was it. That was the moment that turned me around on Star Trek. And I sat down and wrote an outline for science fiction. Now, I knew science fiction. I'd been reading it since I was 9 years old, and I knew script writing because I'd been trained over at USC on script format, and we had had conversations on how a lot of writers had come out of television and they only knew the half-hour format, and we were being trained in the hour format, so which there were not a lot of TV writers who understood that. And so I wrote an outline and sent, and my agent took it in on Monday. That's how fast I could type. And I get a call from my agent, says, Gene L. Kuhn would like to meet you. And so I went into Paramount, and I have to tell you, Gene L. Kuhn was one of the most remarkable producers I have ever met in my entire life, and he does not get anywhere near enough credit or attention that he truly deserves. And he was a great producer because he listened to writers not with an idea of, I'm going to tell you what to do, but more of, I'm going to listen to what you have discovered about our show. And he said, I can't buy your outline. It's a little too expensive for what we're doing. But if we get renewed for a second season, please submit stories. And I submitted some outlines. And Dorothy Fontana pulled one out of the stack that said, a fuzzy thing happened to me. And she said, this one has some whimsy. So, and she said, we should hire a real writer to develop it. And Gino Kuhn says, no, I met this kid. Let's give him a chance and see what he can do. And so I'm extremely grateful to Dorothy Fontana and Gino Kuhn. And Dorothy was one of my best friends in the world. And Gino Kuhn, he's my model of what a good producer should be, what a great producer should be.
Onitra, before I get to you, I know you had a motto on Andromeda. What would Gene do?
Yeah, exactly. It was, if we encountered a story problem, we weren't sure how to solve it, we would ask, what would Gene do? But we meant Gene Kuhn, not Gene Roddenberry. Because he is exactly what you said. I mean, he is the unsung hero of Star Trek who really defined what the show and what the franchise would be going forward even till today.
Yeah, Gino Kuhn knew script writing better than just about anybody.
Yeah.
Onitra, now I want to ask you the same. As the newest member of this elite club, it's like Club 33, but maybe it's Club 1701, these veteran Star Trek writers. What was it like for you, and what was your road to this Star Trek, which you're on Strange New Worlds now?
I asked Gene, can I visit the set? And he said, yeah, just go out this door, turn left, go up, it's stage 9. And I walk in, the Star Trek sets, which I'd only seen on black and white TV at that point, and my jaw dropped. I was on the Starship Enterprise, and there's this, I don't know how, if anybody else has felt it, I'm sure you guys have, but you walk on the set and suddenly you're no longer on Earth. You get this chill, this body frisson of just emotion that this is real. And then that first few days I met all the cast members except one, and I'll tell you that story. But I mean, and Nichelle Nichols was in the Mirror two-piece bikini outfit, and it was a week before my heart rate returned to normal. That woman was, let me tell you this, I've met Sophia Loren. I will take Nichelle Nichols over her any day.
Some of these writers weren't allowed on set or to meet the cast when they are on their Star Treks. But Onitra, tell us about your journey.
Well, writers were encouraged. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry.
I know there's just so you know, there's a horrible echo up here.
It's
very hard to hear questions among a panel this big. So, I mean, it's hard for David to hear what I'm saying, so please understand.
And that's why you should charge to the doors and start yelling lower decks.
No, I had the exact same feeling the first time I was set foot on set for Star Trek, and my first episode we actually turned it into a fantasy set, so everyone was freaking out because it wasn't just the Enterprise, it was the Enterprise in a fantasy world. So I got like a double, I can't believe I'm here, what is happening, feeling in my gut that stayed with me every time I went on set. But my journey, I was in the Air Force, so my parents were military, so I followed that path for about 7 years. And it wasn't what I wanted to do, but it was the reality of it is something I had to do in order to, take care of the family and pay for college. Once I got out, I found myself a mom, and I had this thought, like this just hit me, that said, you're gonna go back to school, but you're gonna do something that people told you could never do. That way, when your daughter gets older, she will say, my mom did something impossible, so you can't tell me anything. And so I said, well, I'm gonna move to LA and try to figure out how to get into this Hollywood writing world that I've only seen interviews of and read on Google. So I went out to LA, went to Los Angeles Community College for a bit, helped the veterans out there, and got picked up to go to Wesleyan University, which is way out in Connecticut, and I've never heard of before and thought it was a scam. And then I found out it wasn't. I literally told them, you scamming me? They scam vets all the time. But I found out who our alumni was, and it was a small university, and one thing I'd learned is that what I needed was a mentor, as many as I could, and not to be lost in the crowd, because it's so easy to get lost in a crowd. So I ended up going to Wesleyan, befriended my professors, start talking to all our alumni. Eventually I got in front of Alex Kurtzman and a couple other people, and was able to just talk to them, thanks to my connection at Wesleyan. After I graduated, I hit the ground running. I got my first job as a writer's PA for a Netflix show, and then I got hired, surprisingly, on Strange New Worlds as a writer's assistant. It was during COVID, so we went new show online. Everyone's panicking, and season 1 was wonderful. Akela Cooper talked to our showrunners and asked if I can co-write an episode with her, and that became 108. And the next thing I knew, I was staffed and just hit the ground running from there.
So I want to ask you, so now you have your dream job, you know, in television. Okay, I'm working on Star Trek. This is fantastic. What was the moment reality, the first challenges where you realized, okay, but now I'm surprised and I have to kind of pivot, and something you didn't understand that you quickly came to understand about writing for Star Trek? Mr. McMahan?
Yeah. So Lower Decks was my first show after Rick and Morty, and I had to showrun it, write it, cast it, deal with a whole host of producers, network executives, studio executives, a new writer's room that had never done this show. And I found the thing that was surprising was around 5:30 every day, sending everybody else home and staying and trying to figure out what problems we had to solve for the next day. And it was usually me alone at from 5:30 to 7 with all of the stuff we had talked about that day, trying to get it so that when the writers came in the next day, they had clear stuff to work on. And I couldn't believe how much of it was bottlenecking with me, because I had been used to a big team of people all throwing ideas out, and I realized how quickly, if you don't have a bottleneck, nothing gets done. And that really surprised me, but I'm glad I was doing it. The instinct was right to give people stuff, cementing stuff for them to actually do so they can actually have victories, so it wasn't just kind of like swimming in the conversation every day. I also had the unfortunate realization that because I was working with comedy executives some of the time too, they didn't know Star Trek as well as I did, but I couldn't Mike-splain Star Trek to them or they would get mad. So gently being yes, there are famously bad admirals in Star Trek. That can happen to cause conflict, stuff like that. So navigating all that stuff and then bottlenecking at me and feeling the weight of that was a big surprise. But that's when I got to be my nerdiest and really lean on the stuff that I liked about Star Trek the most, and then getting to have all the other voices in it after that was really cool.
Michael Taylor, David was talking about the importance of Gene Kuhn, if not a mentor, someone who championed his work, who loved writers. You had the opportunity to work with two great showrunners, Ira Stephen Bear and then later Jerry Taylor. I wonder, from your perspective, what you learned from them that you brought with you when you became a showrunner.
I think when Mike was telling his story, I was actually thinking back to not something I necessarily, I guess something I realized on my own, but it was through Ira Bear. I was still a freelancer then, and I had come out here from New York to break a story on another episode. And we were all just flummoxed at a certain point, and put in, a couple long days, and, would this work, and really late. And the next day, Ira came in and said, I don't know, he said, I'm sure the same thing happened to you guys, but I was driving back on the highway, and suddenly I had to pull off on the shoulder because I was thinking, when did Odo know what he knew? Or something like that. And I thought, no, man, I didn't fucking pull off the highway onto the shoulder. This is fucking insane. But at the same time, this must be what it means to run a show. That level of obsession and, need to figure things out and not just relying on a staff, no matter how gifted they may be on the basis of your gift of assembling them. But so that lesson stayed with me, is that, don't stop thinking about it, ever.
Well, Michael, you work closely, obviously, underneath Brannon and Manny Cotto, and also Ken Biller on Voyager. Same question, kind of, what did you learn? Because then you went on to do co-create and run Perception with Eric McCormick for TNT. What lessons did you take?
I think the biggest lesson I took was to listen to your writers and really hear them. It's very interesting that I'm on the stage with Michael Taylor right now, because I distinctly remember a very uncomfortable moment in the Voyager writer's room in season 7. I'd be very curious. I know which episode.
I was having an intestinal issue. I don't know why everyone made so much of a deal about it. I'm sorry.
Michael had pitched an idea. I think we were breaking a Neelix story, maybe. Michael had pitched an idea. It was Neelix's last episode, actually. And I can't remember what your idea was, but for some reason, Ken, who I love and have worked with many, many years since on several shows, he was first-time showrunner. And he kind of made fun of your idea, and some of the other writers kind of piled on. And it was a little uncomfortable. I was new to the show. It was good-natured, but still, it felt uncomfortable. And then within 10 minutes, everyone realized that the silly idea, quote-unquote silly, was actually the way to go. And that idea, whatever it was, I'm forgetting what it was, ended up in the script. And Ken apologized in the room, I remember that. But I mean, that was kind of like seared into my memory. You never know where a good idea is going to come from, or an idea that sounds ridiculous when you first say it. A few minutes later, it might not sound so ridiculous and might be the way to go.
That's great. Lisa, you also worked for Jerry Taylor, who passed away last year. Remarkable woman. I know she was a mentor and a champion of yours. What can you say about what you learned from working for Jerry?
I think the biggest thing I learned from working for Jerry was that you created a safe space so that you could, suggest a really stupid idea. And you knew that it was wrong, you knew that it was bad, but you knew that you were safe in saying it. That they weren't going to laugh at you, that they would, might pass on the idea, but I felt very safe and developing ideas and pitching new ideas. And I think that she just created that kind of environment where everybody could be their most creative selves and not have to self-censor before they even suggested anything. So that's the biggest thing I took from her.
Okay, well, I have so many questions, but quite honestly, there's so many people lined up here. I don't want you to become like the villagers in Frankenstein, torching the windmills. So I'm going to let you guys ask the questions. That's why you're here. So, and I'm going to direct the question. I can't have everyone answer every question, or we'll be here all night. So, and I can't take the singing anymore, so I have to leave in 15 minutes. So let's do that. Let's get through these questions. Step up to the mic and let's hear what you have to say.
Thank you. First of all, thank you. You're all very talented. Thank you for being here. For someone who's never written a script before but wants to, where would one start?
I'm sorry, we're getting a lot of distortion from the microphone. Okay, so
Panic.
Onitra, what do you think? When you've never written a script before, where do you start?
Well, now I'm panic.
That seems to be the consensus, panic.
No, some of my first scripts, even now, I write what I want to watch, and I write what I love. So for me, it's, at the moment, horror. But, yeah, horror. I'll say horror. But that's what I start with. They always say write what you know, and I say write what you love, because writing can really be a long process. So you might as well, especially if it's your first script, really enjoy what you're doing.
Jen, would you agree with that?
The first thing I do is clean the kitchen, clean out the fridge, do gardening, do anything you can possibly do except write. Make excuses, cry, panic for 3 days, and then when there's a deadline, maybe 12 hours in, then it kind of clicks. I don't know, something just clicks in you and it hits. That's not a great answer. I'm just going to go with you're the correct answer, and then I'm the very exhausted 20 years later answer.
Thank
So
you
there
for your
go.
question. Next question.
Hi, the question is for Lisa. So my favorite episodes are The Omega Directive and Scientific Method. I was one from Voyager. I was wondering your inspiration and writing process for those 2 episodes.
I'm sorry, you were asking about Scientific Method and?
The Omega Directive.
Oh, the Omega Directive, okay. Well, Scientific Method largely came out of wanting to do a bottle episode. Because you have to do certain episodes that are cheap. That means they only take place on the existing sets. You don't have too many special effects, not too many guest actors. And so I thought for Scientific Method, I thought about like alien abductions. And, people always talk about being, the scientific subjects of these aliens. And I thought, what if we were the subjects of alien experiments? So it kind of came out of, first of all, being cheap, and also just from the general zeitgeist of all these alien abduction stories. An Omega Directive came out of, I really liked Janeway and Seven's relationship. I thought that really had a lot of good nuance to it. I mean, it was a little bit like mother-daughter and commander-crew and, human role model. I think there was a lot to explore there. And so we came up with this idea of what if there was this kind of substance that had a directive that if you encounter it, destroy it, no matter what. Don't study it, don't ask, just destroy it, which is really kind of counter to what we, as Starfleet people, want to do. We want to explore it. So I kind of gave that to Seven and had Janeway be the one that wanted to follow the order. But it was really to highlight their relationship.
And Lisa is the co-host of Treksperts Briefing Room, which is a sister podcast of Inglorious Treksperts. So her and her co-host Peter Holmstrom actually do deep dive with writers every week-ish about different episodes where they really go into depth. That's something worth listening to because you'll really get an analytical approach to virtually every series from Star Trek with the writers who made them. So thank you for that. Next question, please.
Hi, this is for Onitra specifically. I can tell you that fans are loving your work on season 3, but in season 2, you got to write perhaps the most Uhura-centered episode in all of Star Trek. What does it feel like when you're given a task like that?
Oh, it feels great because I love Celia, and I love Uhura, and you really got to do honor to both. I wanted to write a script that really honored Celia, but really honored Uhura, and she plays her, she knows Uhura. So not just writing it, but being on set and watching it come to life, it just was a wonderful moment.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hi, thank you for being here. For any of the TNG, DS9, or Voyager writers, was there ever an idea that you really loved that Paramount just vetoed?
Oh, was there an idea that they loved that Paramount vetoed? It wasn't so much Paramount as your showrunners who were rejecting ideas for various reasons. Michael, was that an issue for you?
No, I never really heard of interference or rejection from Paramount.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more really not about the studio than it is about people you're working for. Did you ever have something you loved that was sort of the kiboshed?
I'm sure I probably convinced myself the idea was no good, but I think if you go back years later and look at it, you find you might actually even be able to turn it into a television series. So.
Oh, well, are you alluding to something? Okay. Yeah, Lisa, the stuff you pitched that didn't go to development that you were disappointed with?
When Roxanne Dawson became pregnant, Of course, the challenge was to hide it. But I came up with an idea that would explain it as like this weird alien pregnancy, and she was going to give birth to her own clone, and I mean, it was very kind of weird. But they basically axed it because it would be serialized. And we didn't do serialized stories at the time. We had to do standalones. And so to have an element that would continue over many, we couldn't do it. So we just had to hide her big belly behind consoles and stuff.
Thank you for that. Next question, please.
For anyone on the panel, was there ever fan fiction or speculation you encountered where you said, yes, let's make that canon?
Fan fiction you wanted to make canon. That's a good question. I think McMahan, you want to?
Yeah, I like doing that all the time. We had Garrick and Bashir kissing on screen. That was cool. We like to treat all of Star Trek, the fandom, the books, the comics, the ads, the McDonald's commercial, where the X-Men showed up, all the shows. We're agnostic. We love all of it, So like we like to pull all that stuff in, and because we're a comedy, we figured out little ways to do it in a way that fit into the timeline. We were treating everything like a national park. You want to enjoy it when you're there, but you don't want to fuck around with it when you're there either, So like, we tried to take our trash with us when we were messing with it. So we would put in these kind of like get out of jail free cards, like, oh, this is multidimensional, so if it's really important to you, it's canon. But if it's something that you weren't keyed into, there was like a way for you to keep enjoying it.
Yeah, you ran into that kind of problem, David Gerrold, because you had a script that you were passionate about that was really great, Castles in the Sky, which then got rewritten and became an entirely different episode with Cloudminders.
Well, I wanted to do an economic allegory, that there were the billionaires who lived in their castles in the sky, and then the workers down here. And the week after, and they liked it, and then it happened the week Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, and I came in, and everybody was, Bob Justman and Fred Freiberg was, yeah, we gotta really, this is an important story, and we gotta really do it. And then a week later, their fervor had died down, and says, well, maybe we should tone it down a little bit. And they said, they said, we'd like you to take a collaborator. We don't think you're experienced enough to write for Star Trek. Okay. And they suggested Ollie Crawford, who, a longtime Guild member, very, very skilled, wrote the Galileo 7 episode. And in fact, he was one of the founding members of the Guild when out there on the picket lines, when the studio goons were beating people up in 1949 or so. So, I mean, Ollie was, I admired and respected him a lot. So we blocked out how to do Castles in the Sky, and we spent an afternoon playing pool and blocking it out, and we turned it in. And then my agent calls a week later and says, they cut you off. What? I mean, they asked me to take Ollie, and then they cut me off. And they handed it to Margaret Arman, and the problem was solved if all the little troglodytes working down in the mines would just wear these gas masks. They would be protected against xenite gas, and they could go back to work, and nothing would change. And I was very upset about that, because what I wanted was that the problem was going to take time to solve, and as the Starship Enterprise is leaving the planet, when they have reorganized that, they're going in and reorganizing the whole culture, and Kirk says something like, well, there's another problem we've solved, and Dr. McCoy says, yes, but how many children will die in the meantime? I really wanted to, twist the knife on that one. And Margaret Arman made it just another, and I like Margaret. She's a good writer, nice woman. But I thought that what the script turned out, and I don't know who was responsible for the structure, but I thought they had missed the opportunity to make a very important statement.
You can't solve every problem in 60 minutes, and of course, that's why serialization has become such an important part of television.
You can solve it in 8 episodes.
Next question, please.
My question is for David Gerrold, and I am curious what your reaction was to the adaptation used for Trials and Tribulations.
my reaction to Trials and Tribulations. And if you watch closely, you'll see I'm an extra there. I thought the script was brilliant. I thought all of the writers who were involved, and they weren't allowed to visit the set, so I didn't get to meet them, but I thought it was one of the most brilliant television scripts, Star Trek or not, it was just one of the most brilliant scripts I have ever read in my entire life. And I was just absolutely gobsmacked at how good it was. And the episode, directed by Jonathan West, was absolutely one of the best Star Trek episodes I've ever seen.
Yeah, and Mike, you got to revisit the TOS era when you did In a Mirror Darkly, which we'll be talking about tomorrow. But do you want to just say something about that? Because in a way, it's a companion piece to Trials and Tribulations, and that you got to do an episode in the classic Star Trek era, which was a dream for you.
Yeah, it was something, well, obviously we'll talk more about it tomorrow, but working on a show that is, I didn't work on the original series. I'm obviously a huge fan of it, but the idea that we would ever get to a point where the show was not quite canceled, but almost, and they just let us do, that's sort of the best position to be in, where you've still got a bunch of episodes to do, a certain amount of money, you're not getting notes from the network, you're kind of already canceled, they don't care, you can do what you want. And we did what we wanted, and we had a great time doing it, and I think we made some pretty good Star Trek.
Well, if you had worked on the original Star Trek, David Gerrold wouldn't be the youngest writer to have ever worked on the original Star Trek. You would have done it as an infant. So, next question, please.
All right, thank you. For any writer, you receive a lot of studio and network notes. Can you give an example of a useful note you got from a studio or network?
Next question. I'm kidding. Useful studio or network note. Anyone want to take this?
I mean, just briefly, they're your first audience. They love saying that, but it's also true. So like, something might have made sense in your head, in the room, on the page, and then somebody who doesn't know what the heck you're talking about reads it and is like, this makes no sense. And it's like, all right, if they don't prescribe how to fix it, it's really valuable. If they prescribe how to fix it, that's going to come with a bunch of problems because they didn't think of everything. So just having a good executive who can say, I loved this, I didn't understand this, it's helpful to have it before you're putting it in an actor's hands because they're going to have the same question.
And you weren't really getting notes on Deep Space Nine and Voyager. The studio wasn't giving many notes. It was really Rick Berman. But by Enterprise, you were getting notes from the network.
We were protected. I think one of the reasons the Berman era, as they now call it, turned out the way it did is they left us alone, and Rick really was our studio. But Rick was also a writer, and so he protected us. He protected us. It was like a heat shield against those notes. And yeah, then there were some corporate changes, and then CBS took over, and then suddenly we got a lot more notes. But even then, we didn't get them. Rick got them, and Rick protected us.
Anitra, you're still working on a show, so I'm not going to ask you that question. But I am going to ask David, because of course, David famously was working at the time that Stanley Robertson was this network executive. And for those of you who don't know who Stanley Robertson was, he was the first African-American studio executive to ever work at a network. And Gene Roddenberry had specifically requested him to work on Star Trek. What can you tell us about Stanley? Was he insightful? What were his notes like? Did his own unique experience bring anything unique to his insights?
Well, I never met him. And there weren't many notes on The Trouble with Tribbles, except, don't dramatize this thing too much, But I will tell you a story. I was in Gene Kuhn's office, and he was on the phone to Stanley Robinson. And he said, and this will tell you the relationship. He said, Stanley, you're full of shit, but we'll do it. And now I don't know what the note was, but that said to me that Gene Kuhn had a great relationship with Stanley, and that Stanley was a cool guy that he could, And so I assumed that the notes were negotiable by the way Gene was talking to Stanley on the phone, that we understand your concerns, here's how we can deal with it.
I was having a conversation with a former Star Trek writer who's a showrunner now, and they said something really sad to me about the state of the industry now, which is that it used to be that studio executives and network executives considered themselves lucky to work with you as the creative. And now they feel you're lucky to have the chance to work with them. And the paradigm has shifted, and it's really terrifying that that's the attitude. Not everyone, but it has become much more pervasive in the industry, particularly in the streaming era, where you have algorithms making a lot of these decisions and not sort of creative decisions being made by creative people. But I don't want to end on a negative note, so why don't we're at the 59, it's 59 and counting. Next year is the 60th anniversary of Star Trek. Where would you like to see the franchise go, and would you like to be a part of it? I'll start with you, Ashley. You've never worked on Star Trek, but you actually did. You worked on Star Trek Beyond and for a while. But why don't you tell, and we'll just go down the line before we wrap up.
I want more Lower Decks, man, and I just want to watch it.
All right. All right, okay, all right, Lower Decks. I'd also like more Lower Decks. I'd like to see Starfleet Academy, which I think is going to be cool, and I'd like to see something brand new, and I'd like some frickin' movies. Would be nice.
Michael Taylor.
I still think of Star Trek pitches. 30 years out since I, first sold one. It's such a malleable and adaptable franchise and world, I guess, more accurately. And I still can see things through that lens and say there's a chance to do a show that has something to say about the time we're in and still be immensely entertaining. And I've got such a pitch. So I'll see if I get to deliver it.
Well, Michael, I guess it was just revealed the other day that you and Scott Bakula were cooking up something, which obviously you're passionate about. Doesn't mean it'll ever get made, but it means it's something that you have a major veteran of the Star Trek franchise who's excited about. Do you want to say what that is?
Well, people could go online and read about it. It's about where Archer ends up later in his life. It's something very different from Enterprise. I don't think, as much as I love that show and love my time on it, I wanted to do something in that universe but different. And I think that was also the appeal to Scott. And I don't know how many television concepts have been pitched over the years for different Star Trek series, but it's a bit like, those nature shows with the turtles hatching on the beach and trying to make it to the ocean before they get picked off by the birds. It's kind of like that. In fact, I feel like I'm among a bunch of lucky turtles right now for having gotten to write for this franchise to begin with. But because I'm greedy, yes, I would love to work on it some more.
Jen, what about you? 59 and counting. What is the future?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would love to do it again. I also would love animation to get a little more respect in the... I think there's stories to be told that can be maybe told even a little less expensive that maybe wouldn't have been able to been done. I also would love to do a Star Trek Traveler series, which would be fantastic to do space, time, and thought, and to touch on all the other parts of the franchises, which I think would be a great thing. So yeah, let's make that happen.
Lisa, same question to you.
I would love to see a Star Trek episode that is actually set on Earth right after the eugenics wars, to see how did they go from that to the Star Trek future that we know and love, and how did they go from the darkest time on Earth to what would become the brightest time on Earth. I think that would be encouraging for all of us in a dark time right now. And I would love to be part of telling that story.
David, my question is a little different for you because you were intimately involved with creating, being a part of the creation of The Next Generation, more so than a lot of people know. And can you talk about what it was like to be there? The future of Star Trek hinged on the success of Next Generation and what was riding on it and what the challenges were and how you feel you were able to accomplish those. Because we owe to you and some of your Confederates obviously the future would not exist had Next Generation not worked, and it worked largely because of the work you did in those early days.
Well, we started out, for the first 2 weeks, we would screen a movie to bring Gene up to speed, because he hadn't been paying attention to what had been done. So we would look at Alien, we looked at Aliens, we looked at some weird pictures like Ice Pirates, simply because I felt that the set design and the production values were interesting. We looked at a lot of different science fiction pictures, and then we would go to lunch in the commissary, we always got the private room in the commissary, and we'd walk in, and everybody would turn around and look. There they go, right? They knew we were special, and we would have conversations about what we'd seen and what we could do, and because we were inventing from scratch, really, and. Finally, and then the next couple of weeks were about finding offices. And Gene insisted we go back to the original Star Trek offices. And so that took, whoever was in there had to be moved out. And they weren't happy about it. And, but then we got in there, and Gene said to me one day, I'm going to brag one moment. I said, this is what Star Trek is about. It's about the creation of the future. And it's about designing the future of the human race. And Gene said to me, sometimes I think you know more about Star Trek than I do, which was this very strange compliment. And then he turned to me and he says, I want you to write the Bible. So I would go in every day and we'd have a conversation about who the characters would be and what the structure of the show would be. And sometimes he'd say to me, you tell me who, so I said to him, I said, well, let's split the hero between Picard and Riker so that Riker leads the away team and Picard, we never put the captain in danger unless it's absolutely necessary. And he says, I like that. And then he suggested, let's have, we went back and forth whether the character that Will eventually became was going to be a boy or a girl. And finally, he decided, okay, we're going to have this character who's a 15-year-old super genius. And I said, okay, but let's have it be about the lessons he learns rather than him saving the ship. And Gene said, yeah, that makes sense. And I quoted back to Gene something he'd said in the original Bible, is if I won't believe it on the bridge of the battleship Missouri, I won't believe it on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. And that was the premise that I worked under. And so I wrote the production Bible, and then I said I would like to write a script called Blood and Fire, which, thank you very, very much. What happened was somewhere in there, Gene's lawyer, about whom I have nothing nice to say, so please don't ask, decided that he was running the show. And I will tell you this one story out of school. When we finally had proof that he was rewriting scripts, me and Dorothy and Herb Wright went to the Guild and said, this man is violating Guild rules. The president of the Guild went to the president of Paramount and said, we're going to shut you down unless you get rid of him. And armed guards, literally armed guards, escorted the lawyer off the lot and wouldn't let him back on. And that's when the script started getting a little bit better. But I always wanted, I love Star Trek, I still do. And if the phone rang tomorrow and somebody from, well, it's not Paramount anymore, it's Skydance, called me up and said, would you like to do a script for Star Trek? I said, just let me call the airport. I live in Vermont now, but just let me call the airport and see when the next flight is. And the answer is yes. That's because I would do anything to work on Star Trek again. So it was a great adventure. It was an enormous part of my life. And the reason I love it so much is it was a vision of a world that works for all of us with nobody and nothing left out.
Onitra, it's only appropriate that you bring this panel to an end as the only writer here still working on Star Trek at the moment. So why don't you sum it all up for us? The power of Star Trek, your hopes for the future of the franchise, and why it means so much to you.
Well, I'll start with my hope for the future, which I think is really the hope for television. I wish we had more episodes. So many stories get left on the floor because we don't have enough episodes to tell very meaningful stories. And I really think that's a shame across all television. What Star Trek means to me, what it means to a lot of people, actually what it means to my family. I'll talk about my aunts, uncles, my mom. They grew up watching Star Trek, watching Uhura, seeing themselves on screen. And when I got this job, everyone in my family, like I don't always get along with them, but all of a sudden everyone's calling me and proud of me and just can't believe it. And it's just this amazing moment because they grew up, during that era. And I said this in the room, I'm like, my parents were alive during when Martin Luther King was around. I mean, they had some terrible stuff said to them. And so being able to work on a legacy show to give voice to Uhura, knowing that that character really gave my mom a place to be a nerdy black woman, just means a lot. And I know that means a lot to a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. So I know the franchise is going to continue. It always has to, so.
Well, I don't know how to follow that up. Okay, we're back. So that was great. David Gerrold, Michael Taylor, Lisa Klink, Michael Sussman, Mike McMahan, Onitra Johnson in conversation, the Ultimate Trek Writers Room. Ashley, that was a really great panel, I thought.
Yeah, me too, man. I mean, look, it's the thing that jumps out at me is to the person, all of those people love Star Trek. And, we can quibble about how successful the various shows have been as Star Trek or as drama or as, I don't know, anything at all. But every single person on that panel legitimately loved Star Trek. There wasn't anybody up there who was like, yeah, man, this was a gig.
Yep.
It's like, it's set faces to frappe and whatever, it just, that wasn't the attitude. And to hear, how Star Trek has been meaningful to them, how some of them have carried it forward and continue to carry that ball forward. Star Trek is almost like it's like once people get in, it's like a mind virus, man. Like you don't escape it. David Gerrold, like Mike Sussman, like those guys continue to live, breathe, eat Star Trek.
They can't stop thinking about it because here you said, Michael Taylor said, he has a pitch he would love to bring. And then, Mike Sussman has a new pitch for Star Trek Unity, which he came up with his old star, Scott Bakula, which is, as somebody who was privy to the pitch from the very beginning, I have to say it was great. It was terrific. I'd love to see that happen. I thought it was a great idea, and he basically wants to do the West Wing version of Star Trek, which is just, so inspired. And I have to say, and we haven't talked about this on the show yet, but, for people who love Star Trek, big doings at the Paramount Plus, our good friend Chris Parnell, who was an executive, used to run Sony, and then later he was a big muckety muck at Apple, is now one of the heads of Paramount Plus, and I can tell you that he is a dyed-in-the-wool Star Trek fan from the very beginning. I mean, he used to make homemade Next Generation uniforms. He'd go to conventions. I mean, he's someone who lives and breathes Star Trek. I can't tell you how many times we've talked about Star Trek. Obviously, he's championed the work of Ron Moore. He was the executive on For All Mankind for Sony and later for Apple. It's just, I think, great news for the franchise that he is in a position of influence at Paramount.
Yep, for sure. Chris is one of the good guys.
Yep.
Can't wait to see
And
it evolve.
And he presided over the big meeting between Ron Moore and Mike McMahan at our dinner, our San Diego Comic-Con showrunners dinner, where Ron and Mike met for the first time.
Love, exciting, and new.
When Harry met Sally. So
Let's hope not.
That was exciting. Yeah. No, they'll do one of those little interstitials.
That's right. Well, they'll do like a flashback when they're in Paris and they're just sort of walking and smiling and eating ice cream and.
Well, we both liked Star Trek.
Star Trek?
Yeah. And I'm so glad to have Onitra Johnson joining us once again. Her story is just remarkable. And I know that, Ashley, you've been a real mentor to her in the past. And she's just so passionate about that show and having the opportunity to work in the Star Trek universe. And and it's great. And then, you know, Michael Taylor's story is wild, just the fact that he started, you know, in a punk band and ends up, you know, on Star Trek through the most bizarre of ways, you know, being a neighbor of Renee Echevarria. It's crazy.
Right? It's like, how does that work? But no, I love Onitra. She's a doll. And you know what? You know, we talk about people having you know, life experience versus TV experience. And you know, the thing about Onitra is, like, she's had life experience, man. She's a vet. Like, that's how I met her. The Writers Guild Foundation Veterans Program. So, you know, she is one of the few people in modern Star Trek who's actually been in the fucking military. And
like Gene Roddenberry, like Gene Kuhn, you know.
Yeah.
I think Bobby Justman too, right? Darren, if
so.
I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
So, you know, it's nice to know that she's out there doing what she can.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think people, you know, when they criticize Roddenberry, and when you look at his life before Star Trek, you know, and before Lieutenant and before, you know, Have Gun and all those other shows that he worked, I mean, you know, being a speechwriter for William Parker, I mean, the fact that he, you know, flew jets, you know, and bombers, and, you know, and then was a pilot for civil aviation, you know, when he crashed in Syria. I mean, he wasn't in the cockpit, but he was back, you know, as a passenger, and he helped get people off that plane to safety when the pilots were all dead. I mean, he was a real hero, Gene Roddenberry, you know? So, you know, when people talk about the drinking and everything, I mean, like, he, you know, he obviously had some demons, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question that, you know, as a bomber pilot, you know, a lot of people died because of the ordnance that he dropped. Now, was it for a good cause? Yeah, it sure was. It was for the good war, but, you know, you still have to live with that.
You know, the word hero is thrown out a lot of times, and I don't subscribe to it. I was just in the situation where I had to act, and that's what I did.
Yeah, you know, and Gene Kuhn, I mean, God, you know, it's like you said during the panel, you know, when on Andromeda, where you say, what would Gene Kuhn do?
Yep.
And it's just like, we can't extol his contribution to Star Trek enough, because it was so important what he brought to the show. So much of what we love about the show was Gene Kuhn. And, you know,
it's like any asshole can have an idea. And what Gene Kuhn could do was turn it into a story and make that story work. Frankly, like, he could even take things that shouldn't work and make them work. I'm looking at you, Spectre of the Gun, like, and make them work, like, in ways that I personally find brilliant. I'm looking at you, Spectre of the Gun.
You know what people don't get too about, you know, they got to pit everybody against each other. Oh, he left because him and Roddenberry had a falling out. That's not why he left. I mean, like everyone before him, he was burnt out. I mean, this show just
fucking work,
chewed people up and spit them out. I mean, 20, how many was it at? 28 episodes a season?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's an insane amount of work.
It wasn't
People don't
because he was
appreciate
fighting with Roddenberry. It was because he was tired of fighting with Roddenberry.
He was tired of
Right.
everything. Like,
he was
it's-
tired. Yeah.
do not understand. Like, if you have not worked in television, you have no clue what it's like to put out a complete season of television. I mean, the max I ever did was 26, and I wasn't running it, you know, like, and that's a lot. That's a lot, man. It's like, how are you sane?
Is that a lot?
At the end of 28.
Well, most of them ended up in you know, in the hospital, you know, of exhaustion. And, you know, Kuhn was on, you know, his uppers, you know, he was just, you had to take drugs to keep going, you know, and I, you know, it was interesting. I've never said this on the podcast, but it's a true story. Ed Gross, when we were trying to get Bob Justman for 50-year mission, no, he'd already passed away, but we were trying to
you're
talk
still
to the
trying to get
family.
him.
No, we were trying to talk to the family.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the wife basically said, I never want to talk about that show again. It killed my husband.
Yeah. It's a lot. I mean, you do the math, right? Like 28 episodes, that is, you're banging out like a script every week and a half just to stay like on pace with the production machine.
And the rewrites that were involved and the, you know, and the challenges, and obviously the challenges with the network. We, you know, we want more, you know, Planet shows, but we're not going to pay for it. You know, we want less bottle shows. We want more this, we want more that. And it's like, Anyway, it's, I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about this as we go from the 59th anniversary to the 60th anniversary, because as Gene might say, there's more to tell. So anyway, thanks for
a little better.
thanks for joining us for another great episode of Inglorious Treksperts. And if you want some more of the good Inglorious Treksperts goodness, you don't want to miss an exclusive episode up close and personal with David Gerrold for Treksperts Plus subscribers only. So you can go to Spotify or to trekspertsplus.com and subscribe and have access to that episode as well as other bonus episodes. And then you can see us live on the Inglorious Treksperts live tour in Des Moines, September 12th to the 14th, St. Louis, October 10th to the 12th, Milwaukee, November 7th to the 9th, Columbus, December 5th to the 7th, and you can come sail away with DAREN DOCHTERMAN next February on the Star Trek cruise, February 20th to the 27th. So we hope
you keep saying that. I am going, but the cruise is sold out. No one can.
Yeah, but maybe they have tickets, and maybe they aren't going to go, and then they hear you're going to be there, and they say, "Oh, I'm going to go now."
Look, if they have tickets, they're going to go.
Well,
or maybe they hear you're going to be there, and they're like,
even
"I'm
if
not
they
going to
hear
go."
I'm
And
gonna
somebody
be
else
there.
is like, "I do want to
Maybe
go."
they're scalpers. Maybe they're going to find a scalper, and they're going to buy some. I say, I'm going to pay extra money just to get these tickets,
That's
so I can.
not the case.
Come here. You want to buy a ticket?
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. I just see somebody in like a long,
French coat,
raincoat. Yeah, I got tickets for the Star Trek cruise. Come on over here.
Want to buy an E?
You got credits? I got credits.
You want credits? They'll give them to you. You'll be a rich man.
Oh my God! So, Inglorious Treksperts is a production of the Treksperts Podcast Network. Altman, Doctorman, and Miller are executive producers. Peter Holmstrom, Brian Mixer, producers. Mark Rivera is our fantastic audio sound mixer, also director of photography for the video panels. Thank you, Mark, for being out in Vegas so we could share these wonderful episodes with our listeners and our viewers. John Carney is our social media manager. Inglorious Treksperts is copyright 2025 by Treksperts Plus and available wherever you listen to podcasts and now on video via Spotify and on YouTube. You can review Inglorious Treksperts wherever you listen and share your thoughts with us on your favorite social media platform or via email at trekspertsplus@gmail.com or on the Inglorious Treksperts Discord channel. And you should do that because we actually occasionally will pop in there. We'll engage with people. We actually may share little candid comments. You never know. So you check it out.
Everybody's favorite.
We might tell you what we think.
Anyway, we're getting very close. This is the penultimate episode of season 7. Next week is our season finale. And then we'll have a whole new season, 8th season. But you know what? We're so nice. We won't even take a break. We're going right into it. There's no hiatus. We're going to go right into season 8.
No electronic frontier.
And no Lieutenant Yar.
No.
Well, there might be. I mean, Denise might be on the show again. She's been on it quite a bit. She might be back.
Love her.
Yeah, we do. We do love that Denise. That's one of the great things about the Inglorious Treksperts live tour. We've really gotten to befriend so many people. Like I didn't really know Denise well, and now she's just the best. We love her.
Yeah,
pals.
So anyway, on that note, keep on trekking, ingloriously, of course. See you next Thursday. Shh.